So welcome everybody to all of you out there. This is the 13th in our series of Let's Talk Equine. So just to introduce everybody, Cameron, really for most of us here, you don't need an introduction, but international rider and definitely an Irishman through and through from Mayo. You left Claremorris at the age of 18 and went to Switzerland for 9 years, and you were in the Escher stables over there. And then you moved to Germany around 2003, from what I gather. And for sure, a proud moment in your career has to have been winning at the Grand Prix at the RDS back in 2000. So you competed then also in 2006 and 2014 in the World Championships. Of course, fourth individually in 2009 with Livello at the European Championships in Windsor. And of course, Livello now here in Ireland with Andrea Escher of Belmont House Stud. So that's kind of closing in a circle of sorts with your Escher experience. And you competed in 2007 and 2013 European Championships. After a tough time you had with injury, you certainly came out and knocked it all out of the park in 2013. You didn't come back shy. The Nations Cup team, you double clears, contributing to the win out in Calgary with Antello Z at the time, and another big win, the bronze medalist at FEI Nations Cup final in Barcelona in the same year with Antello Z. And then the following year then in Monaco at the Grand Prix there with Living the Dream, another bronze medalist. So, you're based now near Osnabrück for the next wee while, according to what you've just said this evening. The plan is to move on to Belgium, but you're in Germany at the moment and joining us over the wonders of the internet from Germany. So let's hope that connection stays with us now this evening. So thank you very much for giving up your time, Cameron, and you're really welcome here this evening. And Damien, you're a little bit closer to me at the moment, out the road in Ballinasloe. I'm here in Athenry in Galway. So you're at a competition. Your yard is a competition yard, a sales yard, a livery yard, and also from what I gathered, there's bespoke breeding packages can be offered through your better half there, Fiona. So she's resident vet and busy woman. And you, of course, you're producing a large variety of young horses, and for a lot of different people, but I think it's important to note that you are producing for international riders of the caliber of Dara Kenny and Dennis Lynch and Cian O'Connor. And I think you've done an absolutely fantastic job in the last couple of years in producing, in particular, young stallions, and some of those have been Celtic Hero BZ, Ganesh Hero Z, Kinmar Hero Z, Lithium, and of course more recently Bravour VDL and Anchorman, who you've been producing for Dennis Lynch. And you yourself, you're no stranger to success in the ring. You've had so many Grand Prix successes behind you. Second, of course, in the Hickstead Derby back in 2010. And no less than, from what I read anyway, 23 Puissance wins. So a fine tally there. And I gather you actually accomplished a 7'2" bareback outing in Ballinasloe in the Puissance many moons ago. So you must have had the Gorilla Glue out on that particular occasion, Damien. And, I think really, it's a testament to the passion that you have, that you are so involved with young horses now. And, that certainly is something that you do an exemplary job of. And it's such a really, really important link between the breeder and those that are with us here this evening, for the most part, most likely. And, of course, the big sport at the end of the day. So it's a crucial link in that chain. And you're very welcome to join us here this evening. And Andrew, of course, you're down in the southeast in Kilkenny, near Kilkenny City in Stonyford, and always such a generous contributor to these discussions, and so open in the information that you provide as well. The stud, Ennisnag stud, is you're in the heart of family down there, and Niall, your brother, is a big help to you behind the scenes there, I know. And the breeding program has been developing over the last 15 years or so, and there have been so many ESI prefix performers over that time. And over the next hour and a half or so, we're going to get to look at another couple of those. So, you know, I think it's important to mention as well that both yourself and Niall have embarked on the stallion offering. I suppose you've started on that road at more recent times, and congratulations, of course, to the stud on the recent approvals of stage 1 approval of Bravour, VDL and ESI Indico, and of course the full approval of Hosdo, who has done it all with the likes of Harris Moulders, Lauren Hock and Wesley Newland. So, you know, that's great news for you there. And of course, Andrew and Damien, you both joined me on the very first maiden outing of this Let's Talk Equine webinar series back last May, and it's still there. It's available on YouTube. People can go back in and have a look back at it. I suppose at the time it was a little bit of I think we are live and is this Zoom stuff working, but look, somehow or other we're still here almost 12 months on. But what we're going to talk about this evening is you know, the whole topic of which youngsters merit further investment, and we'll discuss that, I suppose, through both the lenses of investment for the breeding shed or the breeding paddocks, and investment for the competition rings and the sport. So they're the two lenses with which we're going to look at. So if I can come to you first, Andrew, I suppose over the years we have talked so many times on this general subject, and you know, I suppose people are familiar enough at this stage that, you know, you place a huge emphasis on genetics and on performance within the genetics. And, you know, I suppose alongside that, you also place emphasis on having a mare that is sound and that is reasonably correct and athletic to begin with. So they're kind of pillars of what you're about from all of our conversations over the years. And your production model really is to try and return the best of fillies into breeding, and to, I suppose, put the very best of your geldings into the sport and produce them up until they're 7 and 8, with the hope that you're going to have a better return for them at that point. And then there's the odd filly along the way that you will put into the sport as well. For example, the ESI China Girl that you have with Damien there now at the moment, and we talked about in our last discussion back last May. But if just to begin with, while I'm setting up the screen share and stuff here, you know, in a general sense, I suppose, you know, there has to be, you have those points along the way where you have that sieve, or you have that sort of, you know, deliberation of which ones are staying and which ones are going. In a general oversight, what are the key points when you sort of have assessments or decision making points along that sort of first 3 years, shall we say? And I guess part of that is, you know, it's in your psyche, I guess, in a way, every time you go out to the field as well. So I'll maybe let you just kick that off while I'm starting up a screen share.
You know, the first thing is, it's a huge decision, because it could be 12 years by the time I put one in foal, and if I keep her at 3 and then put her in foal, and then that foal gets to 7, that's 12 years. So it's a huge investment. So it's important to get it right. So the pedigree is the first thing. It has to have a good pedigree. Secondly, athleticism. And thirdly, its jump, because its jump is going to be, I can improve on something. If, you know, if there's one little bit there, I can still improve on it. Say a little size, or a little bit of length, or a little bit of this or a little bit of that. We can pick the right stallion and try and improve that bit. But if they can't jump, they won't pass it on. So they have to really be athletic and jump.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is everybody able to see that and see me there as well? That's all working okay. You're seeing a screen there now at the moment with Let's Talk Equine on it, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, super job. Okay. Damien, if I could come to you for a second before we get into really looking at horses. I suppose, you know, as well, it's true to say that sometimes the breeder will rock up at your gate and they'll have an idea about the merits of a particular youngster that you're going to take on for them and produce. And sometimes the ideal or the analysis that they have doesn't necessarily line up with what you find out or what you start to feel once you start working the horse. And of course, we will talk as we go on in a little bit more detail about the particular nuts and bolts of the qualities of the individual horses that we're going to look at. But just as a general to begin with, how important is the feel to you as a rider? And when you step back from, I suppose, the finer points of the, the visual analysis of the technique and the visual assessment that goes in that first stages, and you step back from that and you talk about the feel, how important is that? And can you in any way put that across to viewers here this evening?
First of all, I think the most important thing straight away is when they come off the trailer or come off the lorry that they're a good type and they're pretty and they have a good walk. That's kind of a real major thing, because for anybody, a plain horse has to be unbelievable to be a profitable horse for starters. And after the looks, taking that aside, I feel, I know we spoke about it in our pre-trial during the week, that the feeling is the biggest thing, because a lot of horses can have their own way of jumping, but if the rider gets a good feeling, it's to me, it's everything. That it's when the feeling is there, the rest of it will fall into place in its own time, when the horse develops and grows to his full extent or her full extent and finds its own way of doing things. If the rider is able to go with the way the horse is able to jump, I think anything is possible then. But the feeling most definitely is the most, for me, it's definitely the most important thing for going forward with a horse.
And is that something that you get like early on in the play, or is that something that sort of takes time to build?
I'd find with breaking young horse, the amount of young horses we break, I'd nearly feel it over the first jump, and then it could be gone again for the next 5 weeks, and you mightn't feel it again until it comes back in. But if you felt it over one jump, that would do me perfectly fine. Everything else is education after that.
Okay. And Cameron, if I could come to you then, I suppose, at this stage, with all the various, webinars and events and meetings and all the rest and all the discussions over the years, I think breeders are becoming really well attuned to the message that, the sport demands blood, athletic horses with quick reflexes, and their carefulness is important and scope is important. But how much of a role, in your experience, has the temperament or the character and the associated rideability? How much of an impact does that have when it comes to success on the big stages? Whether it's global champion tours or, Nations Cup or whatever, the big stages, how important is that? And I suppose the other element to that question is how much of an impact does character have in I suppose, managing horses through all of what they have to deal with on that, at that stage, in the sense of all of the transport and everything else that surrounds the machine that is the sport at that level?
I think it's really, really important. It's not only for the horses of that level, it's for all the horses. I mean, it's very few horses that turn out to be a 5-star Grand Prix horse, and if we stumble across one of them, it's a great bonus. But if we're producing a young horse or buying a young horse or breeding one, I mean, if you can turn out a nice horse that's going to make you money in the end of the day, make you a profit, that's already a bonus. That's a great thing. So I think the mentality or the brain of the horse is very important. And when you speak about rideability, that's where rideability comes from, having a horse that is willing to work with you and a horse that is willing to learn, So I'm sure Damien has the same thing. You'll have horses that, you start to work with them and you enjoy working with them because you feel like they're picking up on something, and it might be only a small thing from time to time. It's not every day, and sometimes you have to give them a little break and put them in the field and let them digest it for a little while, and then you take them back in and you'll find that in that time they've developed more and they're a bit more open and willing to work with you. So for whatever level, I think it's very important for the rideability. If you want to put an amateur on a horse, the horse that is, on the side of the rider who's trying, you ride horses and you get a feeling that they want to please you, they want to do the right thing for you, and I think it can never be underestimated.
And I suppose hand in hand with that then, you know, given, I suppose, temperament is partly built on experiences as well too. You know, how important are the early years in the sense of that development, those developmental experiences, and the first, I suppose, experiences of training and handling, whether that's on the ground handling or the education process that leads to riding.
Yeah, I think, like, obviously the horse's ability is hugely important, but how they're produced and how they're developed is equally as important. I think you need a rider that is patient, not to push a horse when they're not ready for it. Somebody who has a feeling about, you know, some horses are ready to go fast when they're young, but some, they're a bit more delicate in their mind, and you have to nurse them along. It's a little bit like with children or going to school, you know, some of them learn quicker, they all learn at their own speed. I'll give you an example where I had a little mare a couple of years ago called Shuttle. I got her as a 6-year-old. She wasn't over big, really blood, very forward going. And if somebody was to look at her from the outside, they would say, oh, she's very careful, but maybe not enough scope or not enough jump in the end. But my feeling was, because of her mentality, her brain, she was so positive and she was very careful, but you always knew she was going to pull you to the other side. So I knew that I was going to take my time. Every now and then I would pick a certain class that I'd like to go and win and be competitive in, and she would do that very well. But I was careful not to run her all the time. Otherwise, you will take away a little bit the scope, and you'll turn them into a bit of a speed horse. So I took my time, and as a 8-year-old, she won her first 2-star Grand Prix in Valkenswaard, and we sold her not long afterwards. And then this is still, at that time, even people would be saying, yeah, well, that's probably her limit there, 145. She's not going to do a lot more. But I knew that it was more than that. And now in Florida this year, she did her first 5-star Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago and was placed in it with Chloe Reed. And it was fantastic to see. But I think the couple of things that you mentioned, the mentality of the mare was a huge part of her development, but also how she was produced. You know, it's about trusting in the horse and taking the time and not going for the quick victory or the quick win, seeing a little bit the bigger picture and actually producing the horse.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the evening. So, Andrew, I'll come to you first because we're going to talk about a couple of horses here now. And the first ones that we're going to speak of are out of this mare, Hannah VD Bishop. Would you like to talk to us a little bit about the mother first?
Well, I bought her as a foal in Holland, and her mother is a full sister to Vigo, who is a world champion. So it's a super pedigree. There's 160 horses all over the place in it. So I brought her home and put her in foal, and she's still producing foals for me. She's actually due in about a week's time. So
these are some of the others that are out of the mare, and we're going to talk about 2 of them. We're going to talk about the 2014 by Zorocco Blue, and we're going to talk about the 2017 by VDL Harley. All right.
Yeah.
So first one that we're going to look at here now, this is a really, really short clip, everybody. It is just one fence, so keep the eyes open, don't blink. Okay, so Andrew, coming to you first. I mean, you know, I'll let this play a couple of times here. So talk to us about this, and I know it's one fence, but it was an impression that you got back. Was she 2 at this point?
She was 3, but it's the only video I have. I didn't save the videos back then. Now I put them onto a different thing and we saved them. But she was one we jumped. Super athletic, super blood filly, 16-3, great step to her. Little bit tight through her shoulder. But I can take a couple of things like that, and the fact that she was so well bred. We jumped her in a couple of 5-year-old classes, but put her in foal and jumped her just to give her the experience of it and just to see what she'd do. And we were very happy with her. And we put her in foal to Dallas, who has heartbreaker blood in him, because they're very snappy in front and very good use of their bodies and their shoulders. And that's what we did the first time. And she's in foal to our own horse, Hot Doe, who again is very good in front and very good through his shoulder. This mare has unbelievable scope. She has a good mind. This was a 5-year-old horse sport class in Mullingar. And she popped around it lovely.
Maybe Damien, if I could come to you, I mean, what strikes you when you see this mare in the ring?
Yeah, it's pretty much what Cameron is just after explaining there about the rideability. And if a horse really wants to do it for you, this is a 5-year-old track, which I know myself from jumping in them. They're between 115 and 120. It's a big ask for a 5-year-old, and you only have like probably 20% of the 5-year-olds in the country able to do it, and that's because it isn't because they've got more done than any other 5-year-old. It's because they want to do their job and they want to please and jumpers and their jumpers. So that's exactly what Cameron is saying, whether it's for the top level or for a normal level. Like, this mare looks very nice. She's very happy at her job and she's doing everything very easy. And you can see she still has to learn her job under saddle compared to the way she jumped on the lunge basket, which is a very, very good basket, which she got in deep. And here now she's just learning her job, but she wants to please. So like, straight away she's very nice, and that's a big track of fences for a 5-year-old.
Anything you would add to that, Cameron?
No, like that, you could actually see the mare learning as she went around there. She started to straighten up towards the end. And that's a great thing to see. She made a little fault going into the triple combination, and straight away the reaction was better down the last line as well. So you can feel that as a rider as well. As you're even on one course, I wouldn't worry about a horse making mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's whether if you can learn from them or not, So you could see the progress from the beginning of the course, where she was wandering and looking for a little bit of support, going a little left, a little right. And then by the time you get to the last line, she was straight and she had her head on the job, so that's, you'd like to see that.
Andrew, there were enough positives with this mare for you to decide that you were going to put her into your breeding program, and you have, like you say, you've a Dallas out for her, and she's in foal to Hot Doe.
Yeah, she has a beautiful Dallas colt yearling, and she's in foal to Hot Doe. The only thing the only critic I had from her the whole time was just she was a little bit loose in front, but she gave you a wonderful feel. Anyone that ever rode her gave you huge scope, and she always tried to be careful, even though she's a little bit loose in front. But I can fix that, if you know what I mean. If that's the only fault she has, I think we can work on that and work our way through it. So I'm happy to keep her with her pedigree and her scope and everything like that. I think she'll produce some nice horse.
Just to butt in there for a second, it's funny how Andrew says that about her being a little bit loose in front, but honestly, I wouldn't mind that. Once they have good use of their shoulder and can get their knees up, if they're a little bit gangly in front when they're young, it's not, like Andrew said, she wants to be careful. You get that feeling as well on a horse. I wouldn't worry so much about a horse being a little bit long, as long as they're quick in front and they can use their shoulder and get it out of the way. The technique will come through training and gymnastic lines and stuff like that. Once they have the physical capability to move their shoulder, I think that's the most important thing.
Such an important point, yeah, absolutely. So the next one then that we're going to look at is a half sibling, and this one by Hanley, Andrew. So I'll just let this run here, and you might just talk to us a little bit to start with.
This is a different type of filly, not as big. She's 16-1. Very athletic, maybe not the stride of the last filly. Very correct, good mover. She's only 3 now. So she is a nice filly. Wonderful technique, very scopy, and I think she could be a very good filly, but I'm going to use her in the breeding program.
If I could come maybe to Damien, what strikes you about her when you look at this video?
She's extremely scopy, and she's doing it with pure ease. I'm just watching. I kind of wasn't concentrating on you talking while I was watching the video there, but it's very, she's very happy doing it. She's cantering down there of her own accord, and she's look, there's not much to say there. She's very, very good. Like she's so much ability. She left herself a bit off that triple bar, and she was super careful, but she was landing going forward as well. Like, it's very good when you lunge. When you lunge something like that and they actually jump the fence, make a good shape, and they land and they're moving forward, they're obviously happy at their job. You know, when you're trying to lunge one and they land dead and land too heavy, they just don't have the motivation, and it's just not a great start. But you can see that traveling, she's landing and she's traveling forward as well, which I think is a great thing to see.
Cameron, is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, just like Damien said, she was a little bit off, and you could see in midair, her knees were really tight. She was folded up well, and then she said, "Oh, I have to stretch. I have to go a little bit more here," and she did. You know, you could see her actually making that quick decision in the air and wanting to get out over the back rail. So that'd be very encouraging to see something like that.
These are all again positives in her favour, Andrew, and reasons why you've decided to breed from this mare as well.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find too many like her. So it's important that you keep the likes of those and try and produce 10 more of her, or try and produce 5 more of her out of 10 or 12 or whatever. And I think it's a good starting point to be at, to have something with that ability and that willingness to not to touch a pole and just her things. Now there's a couple of little things we need to work on. She just, I would love a little bit more dressage movement in her. So look, we'll pick the right sires for her now and try and improve on those aspects. And if we could improve on those, we could have a real superstar if they got her jumper and her technique and her carefulness, and maybe something from the stallion in a little bit of size and a little bit of movement.
For you, it's more important to put her to breed rather than to spend time producing her in the sport, because you've already done that with the previous sibling.
Yeah, look, I can have a foal out of her next year instead of going on with her. So she's putting foal this year. Yeah.
So we're going to look at another one here now, out of a different mare. This is Himalaya Beauty Bishop, the dam of this one. So Andrew, you might just talk us through the dam line, if you would start, please.
Well, she's by Lord Zed, and she's out of a mare called Lissyegan, who jumped. She won 3 World Cup qualifiers in New Zealand with Samantha McIntosh. She's from a very good family. Holland Ron Bishop was a very good 160 horse, and then there's Duff on Bishop, who's actually a very good sire at the moment, and it goes back Secret My Love, and it goes back Greneuse, who I love in it. So it has Heartbreaker, Greneuse, Lord Zed, it has a lot of Lord, it has a lot of Lady Killer, of course, all those things. So beautiful pedigree. The mare herself, Himalaya wasn't over big. She's 16 hands. So I sent her to Global Express. He was a bigger type of a horse. And then I got a filly, which I think is hugely athletic, very, very good mare. And
we'll look at that one now in a second, but just even looking at other progeny out of the mare, you know, some of these that you have already produced, what was the feeling with those?
They all needed size. The Cardento was a nice horse. He's competing with an amateur, great mind in America. And then the Eldorado was big enough. That went to Sweden. The next one went to Sweden. The Indorado I lost, unfortunately. He was a very nice horse. And I sold the Kit Kat filly as well. None of them were superstars. They were all very easy, very nice to ride, and they all found good homes at decent money to amateur riders.
And so, like you say, you used Global Express, and you had this filly that we're going to look at next in 2017. So I'll just run the video.
And this is by far and away the best of what she produced as a jumper, you know.
Maybe just talk us through what you felt, what you saw through your eyes on this day.
She's just elastic in everything she does. She just, her step, her body, she can just twist her body in an unbelievable way, if you know what I mean, and wants to be careful the whole time. Just, and that's over 2 foot nothing, if you know what I mean. It's not, she's just elastic in everything she does.
And is it, like, if I can maybe come to Cameron as a rider, like, is it always a positive to have that level of exuberance, we'll say, at this stage?
I think it has to be a positive. I mean, she looks an exceptional jumper. I don't think they always have to jump like that to be a good horse, but like when you see something like that that stands out, that's extraordinary. Like, that's not something you see every day, how she uses herself. Like Andrew said, how elastic she is in her body. To be able to do that with her back end naturally it's incredible, you know.
And this is natural. I mean, this isn't produced. This is completely natural. I
could let you go down and try and put a pair of hind boots on her, you wouldn't be able. Because she hasn't had her hind leg picked up too often. She's definitely never had anything. Yeah.
Damien, what's your impression of this?
She's fantastic there. You couldn't fault anything about her, even when she lands after jumping. She's happy and she's fresh, and she's a kick in a book out of her there. She's fairly class.
So you'd sit on this one, would you, Damien?
Anyway.
Yeah. So what's the plan with this one, Andrew?
The plan, she goes to Eldorado. Von Schillerhoff, I think is the right pronunciation, I'm not sure. He'll just add a little bit more substance to her and a little bit more size to her. And she'll add a lot of carefulness and things like that to him. So that's basically my plan today.
So despite the fact that, like you say, you know, you chose to sell on previous siblings, half siblings, and so forth, you've opted to keep this one for your breeding program.
She's the best of them by a mile. The rest of them are all lovely commercial horses, but this one has something special about her, you know.
Mm-hmm. So as well as the quality of the pedigree, the dam line, etc., the quality of the individual is really crucial to you as well, too, as a component of your breeding program.
You have to keep the best. If you don't keep the best, you won't keep producing the best. If you keep the worst, your breeding herd will get worse and worse and worse and worse. If you keep the best, your breeding herd will get better and better and better and better, and then you have a better chance of getting 3 out of 20 real good ones, or then you get 4 out of 20, then you get 5 out of 20, then you get 6 out of 20, then you get 10 out of 20, you know, that sort of way. So you've got to try and stack the odds in your favor, you know.
And just as a matter of interest, just for those who maybe haven't heard from you before, Andrew, you know, soundness is important to you as well, and you do have your young stock X-rayed.
She was X-rayed, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She had a perfect set of X-rays, yeah. Yeah.
That's another part of the process. So we'll move on to the next one, I think, and this one is called. The animal that we're going to look at is called ESI Bellstar by Dakar out of Helena de la Vie. So maybe talk us here, firstly, pedigree wise and dam line wise, Andrew.
The mare was the first mare I bought abroad. She was by Tampa, who was a contender, out of a mare called Arlou, which was, her jumping name was Eurocommerce Florence Gerko Schroeder rode her. She was a good mare. And the first foal she produced was Starstruck, which won the 4-year-olds in Dublin for me, was second in the 5-year-olds. He's now jumping 145. He's a very good horse. The Baxter I have coming through, he's a very, very good horse. He's only 4. And this lady then came along in the middle. So she's a nice mare, blood mare, good step, does everything, lacked a bit of power in my opinion.
So maybe just talk us through everything that you're seeing here in the sense of technique and everything that hits your eyes when you look at this, Andrew.
To me, she has a good technique. She just lacks that drive and power off the floor to give her the scope to really do it for me, if you know what I mean. So we sold this mare as a jumping horse, and she's a very good jumping horse. Like she'll jump away to her level, if you know what I mean. I think she's talented, but I didn't think she was going to be a 160 type horse, and I thought I had better ones at home to breed off, you know.
Cameron, what hits your eyes when you look at this and you
see? It looks like a nice mare. I can understand. Andrew would know her better and see her more. When you see her out of the trot here, you can see that she does lack a little bit of power. But I mean, it's difficult to jump an oxer out of trot like that. On the right rein, it was better. She was a bit freer on her jump, and she looked like a nice horse. But I mean, personally, I think that's fantastic that you have a breeder who is, like I said before, there's only very few of them that are going to turn out to be stars, and that Andrew is willing to hold on to even the best ones, best mares, and use them in his breeding program. I think that is so clearly the way forward, the way to improve your whole herd and the whole stock, and like that. I mean, when I'm buying a young horse, obviously you're trying to buy a star, but you always, I'd always have in my mind, if it doesn't work out to be a Grand Prix horse, well, what is it going to be? So a little bit of a plan B, that the horse is a nice type and a nice mover and does a nice job for somebody, so you can always sell it. So that's, always, and this mare looked like a nice one, but Andrew identified that he didn't think she was going to enhance his herd, so it was time to set her on. So
when you look at this and look at, admittedly, we're looking at a small snippet, a short video clip. It's a moment of a lifetime in the horse in that sense. What would you anticipate is the job for this lady?
It's very, very hard to say, until you get them under saddle and you see how they ride. But like, you see how she does that off the right rein. She's a lovely way of doing it. She has nice use of herself. She's good through her shoulder. Maybe she doesn't have the biggest scope in the world, but she's going to make somebody happy. Whether, if a horse is doing a nice job at 130 for somebody, that's a very nice horse that can do a nice job and make somebody happy. And they're also worth some money,
And if she went breeding, I'd buy a filly back out of her, no problem, and take a chance, because she has a lot of nice attributes. She just didn't have all the attributes I needed, because I try and keep my herd to about 25, so I can't keep them all. So I would have no problem. I sold one filly. I sold a mare a couple of years ago, and I bought the foal back out of it because the 4-year-old, who is now 5, turned out an absolute machine. And I have the mare sold, but I bought a foal back out of the mare, so I made a mistake selling the mare. So I'm not going to be right the whole time. There's nothing wrong with this mare. She does everything nice. I just thought she lacked a little bit of scope.
Damien, is there anything you would add on this one?
No, but I do. It's actually a credit to Andrew for what he's trying to do and get one of the biggest, or one of the, I won't say the biggest, but one of the best breeding yards in the country. Like, that mare would suit an awful lot of breeders. But I know she's a very nice mare. She'll probably end up a really nice amateur 130, 135 mare. But for Andrew, it's not worth producing her to breed and other maybe an amateur horse again, when he's trying to strive for the professional horses and the professional market. So credit to him for selling it, because it wouldn't have been the easiest decision to make. Sometimes for me, if I had her, I might go, I'll chance her and get one foal out of it. But that's how too many horses get built up when you have an overflow of I'd say normal. I don't mean normal in a bad way, but for what we're talking about here this evening.
Yeah, no, I mean, Andrew, you are exceptionally selective, and it is about managing the size of your herd as well too, and keeping the cream of it. So yeah, the next one that we're going to look at is this, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it. People can read for themselves. By Gilbert van Ruytershof. Honestly, some of the names not so easy for our Irish tongues to reproduce them. Can you give us a little bit of an introduction on this one, Andrew, please?
I went out and I bought a 3-part sister to Sapphire with Greg Broderick. The two of us went halves in it, and about a good few years ago. And I didn't want to introduce her. She was an expensive filly, very expensive filly. So I didn't want to introduce her into all my weanlings were weaned at the time, and they were all together. And if I put her into a pack together, she'd get. So I bought another filly to go with her, and this was the filly I bought. She was not an expensive filly, but she was a lovely blood filly, and I just thought I'd take a chance on her and see maybe she turned out okay. So that's the background to her.
I can see there are some questions coming in, and I promise to those who are putting them in, I'll have a look there in a moment. I just have to stop screen share to do that. So we'll just look at this video first. Andrew, if you maybe talk to us, because you were the first one that would have had the impression, so we'll go with you first.
She was a lovely blood filly. I actually gave a sharener to my cousin Molly and my nephew Andy to get them started, and she's a grand filly, but she's not what we're looking for. She's a little bit. There's my 83-year-old father giving us a hand. We just think she's a little bit loose, a little bit lacking in scope, lacking in power. Take off the ground, she doesn't push like you'd like her to. At the same time, she's a nice filly.
Damien, what would you add?
Well, just for an example, I was saying earlier about the other chestnut that I was explaining that was really interested in jumping, and when it was landing, it was moving forward. You can see this filly, for me, she just lands a little bit short, and she kind of lacks a bit of enthusiasm. You could see the difference between her and the chestnut, how the chestnut was very scopy, very interested. She was landing, she was traveling forward all the time. So it's a good comparison to see the two of them there.
Is there anything additional that would strike you, Cameron?
No, just exactly like Damien said, you know, the other horse, you could see like the chestnut one we were talking about earlier, the two chestnut ones earlier, very focused on what they were doing. I mean, whatever jump they were going to make, they were really concentrating. This mare, nice attitude, ears forward, but as soon as she's kind of got that out of the way, she's looking around and she looks like she's thinking about something else or whatever. So,
So again, for you, Andrew, this was, you know, effectively this was one that you rejected from your breeding program.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just stop share there for a second so that I can take a look at the Q&As. But whilst I'm doing that, if we could just for a little while just talk about, you know, I mean, obviously in those various clips there, you know, we've seen some being lunged, we've seen some being loose schooled, and we've seen some going to the left, we've seen on occasion going to the right. Maybe if I could talk to, maybe if I come to yourself first, Cameron, in your sort of seat as a rider, you know, the early training, the early starting ground, the early introductions, they're so important, as we said already. You know, what's your perspective on loose schooling and on its value, and on, you know, I suppose where the value can be taken from it as well too?
Well, I don't think for me, it wouldn't be huge value. You know, there would be a little bit on it to teach the horses a little bit how to jump, or you could build some things, maybe a little line and stuff like that to get you a little bit of a head start that the horse knows what they're doing. But it's a business as well. You know, people are doing that and they're producing horses to sell them on the loose or whatever. For me, it's nice to see, but you know, I've seen many horses that looked amazing on the loose and then not be the same when they're under saddle, and vice versa, ones that were not great on the loose and then they turned out when they had a little bit of guidance and help from the rider. So I think you know, for the likes of Andrew, it's important for his young stock that he sees, but it's done in a way like you see the horses are well handled. That'll only benefit a rider when they go on to break the horse afterwards. So I think if you're doing it in an educational way like that, but, you know, I wouldn't be into jumping them massive or doing that. I wouldn't also, like, I would look at horses, but I would much prefer to sit on a horse, even to see it jump on the loose, yes, to see if it has an athletic ability. But for me as a rider, I prefer to trot it down over a cross pole and get a little bit of a feel how it leaves the ground, how, you know, a bit of its attitude. It would be a lot easier for me to judge. So I wouldn't put too much time into the loose jumping.
Yeah, but it is important at your stage, Andrew, because it gives you a sense of what you have and allows you to start making decisions about what you're going to do next.
Yeah, I'd have 20 every year. So I can't put 20 into the broodmare band. I can't put 20 into training as such. So I've got to weed them out at that stage, and then look at, there is value to be got there because there is horses slipped to the net, of course there is. But I have to weed them out at that stage down to a manageable number, and then I work them from there, you know. So that's my way of doing it. I wouldn't jump them 10 times, and I wouldn't jump them over anything bigger than what you've seen in the clips there, you know.
And so, like, for example, we were chatting just before we came on air, and you were saying that you had a bunch of 2-year-olds in today and that you were popping them and that they will come in again tomorrow and maybe the next day. But that'll be it then. They'll be put away again.
They get 3 days before they go out now. And then when I bring them back in October, they'll get another 3 to 4 days. And I'll have a fair idea of what I've got at that stage.
And, you know, you have I suppose you have a liking to try and do a bit on the lunge as well as the loose.
Yeah, I do both. Yeah. The loose is handy because you can just let them off, and you can do it on your own more than with people, if you know what I mean. So it's handy to be able to do with less manpower. Sometimes. And
a question actually came in whilst we were talking about the age at which you take the X-rays, Andrew.
As soon as I'm going to keep them. It doesn't really matter what age. It's just the day that I decide, okay, that's a keeper, then I will X-ray it. It doesn't matter what age it is. But anything before I put them into training is X-rayed, because I'm not going to put them into training and then suddenly I sell them and there's a problem. So I'll do X-rays then. So.
And Damien, you know, in the sense of, I suppose, for those that are at home and they are trying out their youngsters, their 2-year-old or their 3-year-old, you know, what would be your advice? I know Andrew said, like, he doesn't build up the fences, he doesn't go high, he keeps things nice and easy and calm, and, you know, calm environment and all of that. What's your advice in the sense of, you know, the setting up distances and the number of fences that are in a shoot and that end of it? Like, what would be your advice on that?
Yeah, to be honest, we don't really do a lot of loose jumping. So really what we kind of do is we let our foals out for a run. There might be 4 or 5 in a pin. We set up a shoot, a cavaletti with a cavaletti, which is only a foot off the ground. And the 5 of them might canter around the corner at the same time to the cavaletti. And it's amazing. Every time you'll see the one which is in front or the one that's stuck in the middle, you can actually see them focused, and they'll jump off their canter as opposed to maybe jumping off 3 legs or basically falling out over it. But it gives you a fantastic idea of the brain of the animal and how intelligent it is. Like we get very excited over a certain amount of them every time we let them out for a run, and we know if we didn't do it for 2 months, we know the one that was very nice the time before, and we know the one that fell out over the time before, or the one that was always in the back. It's amazing that things don't change. Like when you do that as a foal, in general, unfortunately, if they're bad at 3 and they're bad at 6. That's generally how it goes. So it's just for our yard, it's a production yard. There's a lot of horses being rode every day. We don't emphasize too much on lunging. Andrew, on the other hand, has to lunge them, but you can see for people that want to know how to do it, you can see Andrew's approach is either let them walk, trot, or canter into it, which is a very good job. There's nobody chasing them. There's nobody doing anything. If they're good enough and intelligent enough, they'll go and jump. But there shouldn't be, Cameron said it very true, there shouldn't be a huge emphasis put on it. It's good to see what they are, but it's only for that. I don't think it's for trying to teach the horse anything. It's only just to see what you have.
Absolutely, yeah. There's just one, I suppose, question, kind of comment, kind of question here, and I put it to you, Andrew. A lot of people are doing embryo transfers now. Is there a reason that you don't do this with your lovely young mares, so that they can also be produced?
Too expensive. When I have so many, I have 24, 25 mares, so I don't really need to do embryo transfer. And I find that different mares produce my keepers every year. So if it was if I had 5 mares and every year those 5 mares were producing the ones that I was keeping, then I will get rid of the rest of them and just do embryo transfer on the 5. But it's a different mare every year from a different sire and a different thing. So I like doing it the old-fashioned way.
There is another question here, and I'll go back into the screen share then. But apart from gut or instinct, what is the one exercise you rely on to tell you if a young horse has something? I think it's
What you
yeah.
see.
You go for it, Damien. There you look like you want to take.
Basically, it's what we always speak about. It's the horse's attitude, and there's no training exercise to see how good they are. It's how they're willing to participate in the training. Basically, is the biggest thing. If a horse isn't learning a tiny bit each day, well, then they aren't good enough to keep, and they only need to learn a tiny bit. It's only a very small percentage they need to learn, but they have to come out the next day and show that they're after learning something. That's basically it, really, putting it in a nutshell. I'm not sure if that's a good enough answer, but that is the reality of it. They have to be able to show you that they're after learning a very small bit each day.
I think you also like to see a horse that's light on its feet, that comes off the ground light, not a little bit of horse that's a little bit heavier or unathletic. It's a disadvantage already from the beginning, you know. So I think an athletic ability, light off the ground, and like Damien said, good attitude, ears forward, showing an intelligence. I mean, from there on, you have a good chance that things are going to go in your favor. It's not only about good instinct. We speak about good instinct, but, you know, it's an intuition maybe that we've seen many horses, or a horse that might remind me of a horse that I've ridden in the past that was something similar, that was a very good horse. So, you know, when we speak about good, that's just our subconscious giving us some information that we've perhaps forgotten about, you know. So, but I think type, movement, attitude, athletic ability, they're the things you're really looking for.
Yeah.
So we'll return to look at a couple of horses now, guys. So the next one on the list is ESI Jet Set, and again, coming to you, Andrew, just in the sense of Sindara and the Dam line.
Yeah, this is the old Kells breed. So this Sindara is a sister to Arabella, who's jumped international with Keen O'Connor, and it goes back to the family of the pony that the Watchmans won the European Championships on, and also the 7-year-old championship that my cousin Shamie and Claire won the World Championships in Lissyegan at 7. So it's a beautiful old family.
You have horses like Diamond Exchange and Cairnburn Royal Exchange and Diamond Carrot, and all those are in there. Yeah. Special
Envoy, Vivaldi, Harley, Radar. I could go on for days. It's an unbelievable family, and it goes back to my father remembers the mares when they bought them, if you know what I mean. So it's a family that goes back for generations, you know.
So these are a couple of the other siblings here. And you want to note, Andrew?
Yeah, Memphis was a very good horse. He jumped in. He's still in Switzerland. He actually got a colic in Switzerland. He could have been a better horse. Carvalho jumped in the 7-year-olds in Lissyegan and won a medal for Ireland in the children and horses. Beautiful, easy type of horse. The next one went to Sweden, and the last one went to Sweden. And then I kept Jet Set.
We have some video footage here of Jet Set, I hope.
Yeah, this was
my cursor.
Yeah.
Oh, I seem to have. There it is. the invisible buttons here. Okay, so talk us through, Andrew.
I just liked, he was very light and very easy for a Baloo. He did everything. He was very calm about it, and he looked scopy, and he did everything. Just everything was simple to him.
Cameron, have you anything extra to add here?
No, he looks nice, and it's hard to. There's only a couple of jumps there, but it looks nice. And
yeah, we'll get to see him on the saddle in a moment. It's kind of to super slow mode on me here.
Yeah, and it's good. It's with the video that's going playing of it jumping now at the moment. Here we go. It's I think we spoke about this before as well. It's good to see the change and the development in the horse. Like he was, look, for me watching him on the lunge, he was maybe a bit stuffy and a bit overweight. And you might say, I don't know, has he enough blood? But look at the change in him here in a short period of time. Like he's a lovely big blood horse, lots of power. Like it's if Andrew obviously taught an awful lot of the horse, and as Cameron said, it was too hard for us to make a comment over that small little video, but you can see the difference. You'd think you were looking at two different horses here.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But you saw you saw these elements already at home, Andrew.
Yeah, well, he was just in out of the field. I'd bring them in out of the field in August, and I'd give them a pop. So they're fat and they're lazy. They actually, they look a little bit on the plain side because they're fat and lazy. But this horse has jumped in 4 of the spring tours, which are 135 already this year, and he's been the leading 7-year-olds and clear in 3 of them. So he had won down the first day in Kilkenny, and then he's been clear, and he's actually, his best round was in Barnadown this weekend. He was absolutely super now. He really let go, and he was absolutely fantastic. So we'll give him a break now. He's done enough of that, and we'll give him a couple of weeks off. And he's been brilliantly produced by Claire, and Oisin Aylward is riding him at the moment, and Shane did a lot of work with him too. Shane rode him before that, and Shane Dalton. Shane Dalton and Shane Hughes Kennedy. So they've done a brilliant job producing him here, and he's been taken along nice and easy now, and we'll give him a break, and then we'll come back and do a few board classes with him. But I like the horse a lot. Yeah.
It's a very
what's right? Yeah, I was just going to come to you, Cameron. Yeah, what's right?
Very good example of the difference between lunging and, exactly like you said, it could be 2 different horses. The horse on the lunger and the loose looked nice. He had a very nice technique. Like Damien said, maybe you'd wonder, was he lacking maybe a little bit of range? But when you see him under saddle, the horse jumps this course so easy. A lot of blood, like loads of blood, and just without effort, So obviously, with all the clear rounds he's jumping, he's careful as well. So it's a really good example. So it's good to have the loose jumping to give you an impression. If it's a nice horse that has a good instinct, but you can only really make the decisions a little bit later.
And I mean, Andrew, like you don't make all your decisions just based on one day or one moment. I mean, you're looking at them in the field, or you take them in a number of times, and you're also, you're making cumulative, I suppose, assessments.
Yeah, and I could have had more videos of this horse, but it's 7 years ago or 4 years ago, and now I will in future. If you come back to me in 4 years' time, I'll have all my. Because I've now found a way that there's a thing called the cloud that you can put your videos into, which I didn't realize there was. So I can now, instead of deleting videos off my phone because it was full to take the next one, I can now save them and have them for years to come. So that was the only one that I could drag up. It was saved somewhere along the line. I think Niall had it somewhere in his archive. So there was better ones of him jumping. There was one absolutely fantastic one of him jumping one day. He was just unreal. And that's kind of, but look, there's horses that have done that have been brilliant on the long reins and have not been good enough. And then there's things, but this is only one stage. My favorite bit is the next bit when I send them to Damien or to Shane and the lads, and when they ring me back and say, Jesus, I gave that for the pop yesterday and he gave me some feel, and then I'm happy, if you know what I mean. Then he's ticked the boxes. And as I say, I jumped a 3-year-old, sent it up to Damien, and I nearly crashed the car. He said, "Jez, I don't like this fella at all." And I said, "Jez," I said, "I loved him." I said, "Are you sure?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm sure. I don't like him." And then I brought him home and I sent him to somebody else. And he said the same. He says, "I don't like him." And I still haven't. I haven't sold him yet. So they were right. But he was a weapon on the long reins, if you know what I mean. I thought he was the next. I was counting where I was going on holidays with him. So,
and like
so
as a breeder as well, I mean, you're in a very fortunate position. I mean, you have Marion across the road who you can trust. She's family. You know, you have a good working relationship with riders like Greg and Damien and so forth. And Keen, you're very involved with, and Keen, from what I understand, comes down and does assessment days with you as well. So you're logging away all that information all the time.
Yeah, so they're not always, none of these sections are right. You need to get every section. You need to get this section right to keep the right one. Then Damien needs to get that section right, if you know what I mean, that it is that we're and then we have to produce it well, like Damien does, and then we make our money, if you know what I mean. And then hopefully the horse goes on.
As you said, you need to also listen to and take on board the you know, the comments and the feeling that the rider is getting as well.
100%. They need to tick every box, otherwise there's no point going forward with them. And that was at 4. Like that was at 4. We moved him on at 4. You know. So
we'll just quickly look at this one here now, Andrew. ESI La Luna. Talk us through.
La Luna is a lovely Coleman mare that I got. La Luna went to Carrera, a little bit hot. Huge scope, beautiful technique, good family, and she won the 5-year-old consolation in Lissyegan, which was a nice thing to it.
The others in the family. We'll move on for the moment on to the video.
Yeah.
So talk us through as it goes.
This was her as a 3-year-old. You can see her there a little bit heady, which she ended up in the whole way, but she had unbelievable ability. Like she could jump anything. She could jump things from a standstill. She was unbelievable scope, unbelievable power, and hated to hit a fence. Just she'd shake her head and get all frustrated if she hit a fence. So she always wanted to be careful.
Cameron, what do you think?
Very nice jumper. Very, very nice both ways there. Yeah, nothing else to say. It was nice.
Yeah, we'll just we'll show a small little piece of this. This is with Kevin Gallagher at the Meadows with her as a 5-year-old. Cameron, maybe you could comment on her here.
It's careful. I think you can tell that she comes off the ground quite well. She's very light off the ground.
Not like hearing music. Sorry.
I like that. You know, she makes a nice shape over the jump. Comes up good in her shoulder. You see her coming out over the oxer there. Drops her nose. Comes up through her shoulder. Jumps through her body. And it's just the way she leaves the ground. That's what I like about her there. She comes off the ground like she means to jump the fence.
Yeah. For now, and we're going to look at 2 that you have, Damien, in the yard at the moment. So would you talk to us first about Karlensky, please?
Yeah, Karlensky is a 6-year-old Cornel Blensky, Umra Uno mare. I found her for a customer of mine as a 3-year-old, broker, produced her till the middle of a 4-year-old, and then Keane O'Connor, who I do a bit of horses for, and we do a bit of business. He bought her as a 4-year-old. Very, very good mare. She's not over big, but she's very, very blood and lots of power, and she doesn't need to be any bigger than what she is because of her canter. Very good canter from behind. She uses her hock very well. Can be a bit fidgety with her head and things like that, but all the very good ones have some little quirk, if they were very simple and very easy, they probably they're more than likely good enough, they wouldn't be good enough. So the good horses always have a little bit of quirk because they've spurred, so much spurred to them. But that's her as a 5-year-old during the first lockdown last year, which would have been around, I don't know, April, May time. So she was relatively green, but you can see she has a lovely way of doing it. She lets her head down when she gets to the fence, and she has a great way of using her shoulder. I really like the way she puts her 2 front knees out in front of her all the time. Yeah, Keane bought her off the videos, and as everyone knows, Cameron and Andrew know that Keane is an unbelievable man at taking his time with one, at waiting. If he knows it's good enough, Keane could hold tight for 3 years and have it for a big occasion, and I hope this is the plan with this particular mare.
Let's see. Yeah, we're going to see her in competition here now.
So this was her down in Mill Street in the Discovery. So Keane bought her in May of a 4-year-old that she was very green, had 2 shows done, and we had a chat about it, and we said that we just throw her out the field, that there was no hurry with her, and we just maybe bring her in a couple of weeks before Mill Street and bring her for the experience. And she finishing second in the overall final of it. There was, I think, it was 7,500 out of the class, so she actually ended up being very, very good down there. We didn't expect it to an extent because she was very green going, but we gave her a small little warm-up class in the indoor, I think on the Tuesday night. She jumped the qualifier on the Wednesday and jumped the final on the Saturday night and jumped clear all through the week, and she got better and better as she went on, which is a great sign of a horse that's green, and they get in the ring every day, and they improve every day, and they get more blood every day, and they get more interest in their job. So I think this is definitely something for the big classes for the future.
Cameron, what's your perspective on this one?
Yeah, it looks like it has all the ingredients: scope, power. It looks careful. Like Damien said, she throws her head. She looks quite spirited. I'd say it is a horse that this would be one that would need good production, and I think patience, time, not to hurry it too much, and just be, think of the bigger picture a little bit. It does really look like it has the potential to be a Grand Prix horse, but I do think that the horse will need a little bit of time. You see, it jumps a little to the right, probably needs to get a little bit stronger, and little things like that. So time, good guidance from Damien, bit of patience, but it really does look like that has a very, very good jump.
Like we said, I mean, the essence of working with young horses is about treating them as individuals as well too, and taking the time and knowing when to put the pause button on, and knowing when to give a little bit of a rest and pull back and wait as well.
Yeah, and it's exactly from Cameron just watching that video for a couple of seconds. It's very sharp of him there to spot that she jumped to the right and things, and that's exactly her being weak. She has so much blood and so much energy, but yet she was weak off the ground. She was trying to. I can't explain what to do in the jump to the right, but it's a weakness thing. Like, so the whole everything was going to be slow with her. And Keane, I had explained all this to Keane when he was purchasing the mare, and as we said, he's a good man for weight, and so it's just a matter of the field. She went out the field again after that and didn't come in again for maybe 4 months, and that's exactly what she needed. Even though she's not a big mare, she was underdeveloped across her back. She was a bit weak in her shoulder, so as we discussed, 9 times out of 10 she's better off out in the field, and she comes back stronger and comes back happier.
It can happen like that sometimes with the younger horses. Like, I have one there now, and he's 6, and when I had him as a 4-year-old, at the beginning he was jumping to the right, so I put poles down and stuff like that to correct him or whatever, and then then he went through a phase jumping to the left, and then you correct that as well. So it's how they develop. They get a little bit stronger. Maybe they push off one leg stronger than the other, or they go through a shoulder around a corner. So it's about just taking your time and correcting each little thing as you meet it.
Yeah.
There's another one then, Damien, that you have that we wanted to speak about, Ardra Mio Moi. So
this is a 6-year-old Agonix gelding. He was a stallion up to a 4-year-old. Dara Kinney purchased him in the middle of a 4-year-old with the owner. So this was him schooling last week. again, probably doesn't have enough done, but every other horse in the country is the same way in the world due to COVID. But very nice horse, very blood, does everything really well. Still needs to get a bit stronger through his back. He can leave his hind end a bit sometimes. But again, we talk about the feeling. The feeling of this horse is fantastic. Like I love this horse. Like he gives such a feeling off the ground. He's so much ability and he has so much power. The rideability needs to improve still. He still thinks he's a stallion. He can get a bit headstrong and he can get a bit strong through his body on the corners, and you end up getting there a little bit closer than you wanted, and he loses his jump a small little bit. But again, that's training. This is him jumping in Cavan maybe Sunday week, 4 days before the video that you just showed. So this is an example of how I kind of produced them. I don't mind going back down to jumping a meter with a 6-year-old and just give him a day out, keep him nice and handy. I've no pressure on with my leg there and letting him float around and just be happy at his job. You don't want to go straight in after a break jumping 120, 130, give them a fright, especially these intelligent, careful horses. This is by Agonix out of a Conquistador mare. The Agonix can be a little bit hardy, but they're all really, really good horses. But it's a matter of just producing them. He's popping around a meter there. I already know you could go 5 holes higher and he'll do it, but it's a matter of getting everything right in between the fences. For me, is the most important thing. And for me, I say as a producer, and it's important for Cameron to be able to see this, that he can buy a horse in 4 years' time and that he's able to go around a 150, 160 track and be able to control him on a short 4-stride distance or on a dog leg or tight combination. So this is where the basic has to happen.
Cameron, would you add to that?
Yeah, well, the horse is lovely, very attractive type, flashy, the colour and everything like that. It's definitely an eye catcher. But I think, like Damien there, Damien is doing what he thinks is the right thing, you know, and it's important that the owners or the breeders of the horse, whoever is the horse with Damien, trust him to do that. That's his job, you know, and he does it very, very well. And I think, and it's important that the rider is able to be honest with the owners and not, you know, say, listen, your horse isn't good enough, or your horse is really good, he needs a little bit more time, or this is going to be the best year to sell your horse, or I think we better hold on to this horse for another year or another 2 years, or, you know, so it's a relationship that is important between the owners and the rider as well. So the rider to be honest with the owner about what you have, and for the rider to take their time and to do what they think is the right thing, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a good. Sorry to put in just for an example to agree with Cameron there. This horse was supposed to go out of our yard at the end of a 5-year-old, but I discussed it with the 2 owners and the horse just wasn't ready to go. He's still not the simplest horse in the world to ride, and there's a huge amount of ability that hasn't come out yet. So it was a 3-part conversation, and it was a better decision to leave him here till he was 7, to the beginning of a 7-year-old instead of the beginning of a 6-year-old, and it's going to benefit whoever gets the horse afterwards. And I'm going to have all the homework done hopefully, and he can go straight into better competition when he leaves Ireland. So that's a very true and important point that Cameron made, that it's very good to talk about things and discuss it and make a plan afterwards. Don't just agree that I'm taking that horse in September next year, he's going, without having a conversation about it. So it's very good to talk about these horses.
The temptation sometimes can be for owners, I suppose, to try and redeem some of the production costs and to chase the prize money. And there's such a variety of young horse classes there now. You know, it's so important, you know, as you guys have said, to think about the individual, think about the long-term plan, and not just the here and now and the this year.
Well, there is, sorry, but there is, and the prize money is, you know, for certain horses it can be. But if you have a Grand Prix horse, the prize money, I don't care whatever class is in. If you really think your horse is going to be a Grand Prix horse, the prize money is nothing against what the potential value of that horse, if it turns out as good as you're hoping.
Yeah. And other thing is, the horse sport classes are fantastic classes, but I know this horse isn't ready for them because he's too careful and he just may get a fright. So I could go and I could win €350 tomorrow, but I could set the horse back and other two months after the work I'm doing on him. So it's better just that we take our time and we only go in when I feel that he's actually ready for it, you know.
And I am conscious, I know there's a few questions that come in there again. I promise I will come out of the screen share after this horse and I'll have a look at those. So just bear with me. So Andrew, I'm going to come back to you now for a second. ESI Toulouse, of course, out of the first year, was it not, of your breeding program that produced ESI Toulouse?
Yeah, we always had one mare at home with my father, and then when I decided to go buy and get a few mares, we went and got Hannah and Himalaya and Helena and all those mares, and Toulouse was one of the first born on the farm of the generation of, there was Toulouse, there was a nice horse I had, Starstruck is the same year, and we also had horse that Kelly Allen rode for me in, his name has gone out of my head.
Don't worry.
Lissyegan there. So we had 3 145 plus horses in the first crop of 6, which was a fair start.
Great,
so,
yeah, fair strike rate.
Yeah, it was.
So talk to us about Toulouse and about your initial impressions, I suppose, of Toulouse as a youngster.
He was the most gorgeous foal you ever saw in your life. He was just pure blood, and pure step. He was just an amazing model, if you know what I mean. Good length about him, good, very, very good type of a foal.
And there's 2 others in the family that are photographed here that have also gone FEI on the eventing side of the house. Yeah,
Bethany Bay was a nice mare. Just probably lacked a little bit of scope. Clover Echo was tiny. He was 15.3, I'd say, that sort of size. And he went eventing. He did okay eventing. So yeah. And ESI France, I kept as a broodmare. She was unbelievable. But she was actually about 15.3 when I put her in foal, and she's now about 16.1, so she's big enough. But I'm glad I kept her because I have the family now, you know.
So we are, of course, going to talk to you, Cameron, because albeit that Toulouse started his life with Andrew and went on then to the Nacken with Ger O'Neill, wasn't it, Andrew?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and so then you took over the ride then the following year, so in his 6-year-old year, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe talk to us about, I suppose, your impressions before you got him and now, and talk us through what we're seeing here as well.
Yeah, this was his First Nations Cup there, end of last year in Veher. I saw him for the first time as a 4-year-old. It was, I'd say, one of the first times he was jumping with a rider. I was down in Ger's yard, and he said, "Oh, you're going to like this one. It's your type." He was a lot of blood, and he was by Lavello, who I also rode. So we only it was nearly like loose jumping him with a rider on his back over a crossbow a few times, but straight away, you know, he didn't have a wonderful technique, but he knew he knew where the pole was. He was going to go up into the air, a little bit gangly in his technique, but very blood and a very, very attractive horse. And I said, I really like the horse, and he was owned by Andrew at the time. And I said, whenever he's done, you know, his first show or whatever, let me know what you think. Ger rang me back. He said, honestly, he said, I think you should buy this horse. I think it's going to be special. You know, he has a bit of his own way to do it, but he's going to be special. So then I bought the horse, and I left him with Ger till the beginning of his 6-year-old year. He did a lovely job producing him. Didn't jump him that much. He did go to Lannick and he went to Dublin, but you know, he was still relatively green, but I was quite happy to wait with him. And he's like that, like, it's very much like Damien said from the beginning, you know, the feeling on him. You see how bloody he is. There's always something happening. He's very light off the ground. He taps the floor, gets up in the air. Now, he doesn't always let go behind, but he feels so careful. And see his ears, his expression there, like the horse just loves jumping. And it's that thoroughbredness in him. Like, he's got great, huge stride. Like down there, I took one out. And next place, I would add one. All of those things are very easy to him, you know, great range of stride. So I was quite happy to bide my time. A lot of people, when he was younger, you know, they say to me now, oh, geez, I never knew he was going to be that good, or he didn't look like that. I always knew he was going to be good. I didn't know how good he was going to be, but I always knew he was going to be good because he was careful, he was scopy, he had a good attitude, and he was beautiful type and a nice mover. So what more do you want, really?
Actually, I forgot that I had a hyperlink also to him in Barnadown as a 5-year-old. So you can talk to us about that then.
This is a good example. You'll see he's going a little left, he's going a little right. He jumps up in the air. His knees are high, but his forearms are a little bit long. But that was the technique thing that his dad, Livello, was the same thing when he was young, because he didn't have to fold his legs because it was just easy to him. You're just popping out over it. And, you know, sometimes when he doesn't really finish through his back end there, it's also because, you know, Ger is having to guide him. He has to keep him between the wings and stuff like that. And, you know, then you're still trying to keep him straight. But when he gets there soft and he's able to release, then the horse finishes nicely through his back, you know. But his instinct was always to not touch the fence. And, you know, he had that athletic ability and scope that just made you always feel like you could ride him down to any size of a jump, you know.
And of course, you know, I mean, Ger is such a fantastic pilot as well too, and so experienced with youngsters as well. And, you know, you reap the dividend of that afterwards, of the early production.
Absolutely. And that was with Ger. Like, if I saw him at the show there, I mean, I'm not going to say that I would have just went, oh yeah, that's going to be a great horse. But Ger, I had a relationship with him. We had a couple of horses together, and Ger said to me, you know, this is going to be a really good horse. I really like him. So I trusted him as well in his opinion. So, you know, you have to be a little bit lucky like that as well. And with the people you're working with, I also was very lucky. I put him in an auction in Ireland. I think there was the Go for Gold auction at the end of his 5-year-old year. And after Lissyegan, and he didn't get sold in it. Like, so I was really, you know, it's funny how things happen sometimes. I was a little bit lucky, like, for things like that to work out. But I mean, the horse, and he's still growing now, you know, he's not growing in his physical, but in his mind, you know. Like, I would say the last 8 months from this time last year, this was in November last year, from then to now, he's just hit new dimensions as well in his mind. He's really feels like he's loving what he's doing. He's really understanding what I'm asking of him. And I think it's probably over time he's got a little bit stronger in his body. And I mean, he looks amazing now physically and everything like that. So he still needed to develop a little bit. And
what do you see in the future for him?
Well, that's it now. I mean, unfortunately, I had him in Doha a few weeks ago, and this is Doha here. This is the big class. The first day was a 150 or 155. And then I jumped him there, he was clear. And then my next class was to be the Grand Prix. And I went in the Grand Prix and I jumped the first fence. It was going to be his first 5-star Grand Prix. And then I damaged my groin. I had to pull up after jumping the first fence. So, but hopefully very soon, we'll get back to this level. I'm on a Global Champions Tour team. I only really have him for the bigger classes, but hopefully before long we'll see him in some of the Global Tour Grand Prix. And I think it's a horse with championship potential, you know. So hopefully he'll jump a few more Nations Cups for Ireland this year if we're lucky.
Wish you the very, very best with him. I'm going to come out of the screen share now so that I can actually look and see what questions came in. While I'm doing that, yeah, like, I suppose we've talked so much about the necessity of, you know, being careful in the production, and, you know, being mindful of what's been asked of the horses, and, you know, just maybe Damien, like, obviously, you know, here with all the young horse classes that there are, how conscious are you not to over frequently test the horses in competition, particularly the young ones, the 4, the 5, the 6-year-olds?
Yeah, well, at this stage of my career, we'll put it, I'm at a stage where I've built up a good lot of very good owners, and it's easy to talk to them. So I'm not under pressure now to bring a horse out every week and jump them every week. 95% of my owners are looking at the bigger picture of just producing the horse and having a road for it at the end of the day. So I'd never be afraid of over jumping my horses, to be honest. I don't set out a show schedule and pick shows for them, because I think that's more of a job for Cameron when he has his horses to a certain point and they're ready to go. He has to pick the bigger classes, obviously, for the bigger prize money. But for me, it's a matter of taking each week as it comes and how the horses feel and how I think they're ready. Some might have to go out the field for a month. Some might have to do a couple of more shows. So I'd never be afraid of over jumping my horse. I take it as I feel they're fit, to be honest. We have a lot of horses. We can bring 10 horses each weekend and we can change them around. So I wouldn't ever over jump my horse.
Question here, would loose schooling a young horse not be considered educational for them? For example, to encourage forwardness and confidence rather than just to see what you have with a youngster?
Well, I would have got a lot of horses that would have loose jumped. So let's say, for instance, from Andrews, you wouldn't ever know a horse's loose jump. But some people, if I get horses that were bought out of sales, for instance, I don't always agree with it because they end up maybe being a bit too forward and a bit too gamey and don't really concentrate 100% on their job. I'd nearly rather a horse that hadn't even seen a pole in some cases. I'm not saying it's a issue, but that's just for an example. Like horses that come out and have to jump and don't end up being a little bit too keen and don't always concentrate on the job the way they should.
Absolutely. I'll try and push through a couple of these questions before we have to close up. Have any of you had a horse slow to develop as a 3 or 4 year old that didn't fit into the standard production schedule for 3 and 4 year olds that surprised you as a 5 year old once developed?
Yeah, and 6 and 7 and 8. So the whole way through, they can go at different stages. If a horse can suddenly click at 8, they don't have to be 5. They can suddenly and they can go from 120 classes at 8 to 160. There's nothing to stop them from doing that either. They all develop at different stages.
No, but I'm sure Cameron is great. It's just you have to see something to be able to hold off that long for them.
Exactly. It's like what Damien said earlier, it might not be every jump, but every now and then you'll get a little glimpse of something that's there. If a horse is not a good jumper and very normal and doesn't show you anything, then more than likely it's going to stay like that. But it can be green and it can make mistakes, but every now and then you get a feeling, oh, this is something special. He makes an extra effort here, or, you need a little glimmer or something, but it can take them longer to develop, definitely.
Mm-hmm. How would you judge when a youngster needs a break, other than beginning to lose condition? Well, I don't think it necessarily is hung off with loss of condition.
No, they can get a bit too active in their brain. And Emerald went out the field and he's carried very, very good condition, got very strong and got bulky, but he was just getting nearly a little bit more spookier each show. I did 5 shows and he was getting a little bit spookier each day as I was going along. So his head was just getting a bit too hot. It was time to give him a break. So horses can do it in a lot of different ways. We'd be here all night if we were. Yeah,
exactly. Just wondering about blood you referred to. Are you talking about thoroughbred blood percentage or athleticism and lightness on the ground? Thanks.
We'll go with Cameron there.
I think it's a little bit it's combined. Generally, if a horse is more thoroughbred in the pedigree, they will generally have more lightness in their movement and more athleticism, so I think those two things kind of go hand in hand. If you have a stockier, heavier type of horse, sometimes they can be a little bit slower in their movement as well and a little bit less athletic.
Do you agree with that, Andrew?
Yeah, they have blood in their brain, they have blood in their heart, they have blood everywhere. So it's if they can give it to you in their heart, in their brain, they mightn't give it to you looking at them physically. They might be a little bit plain looking, but if they have it in their heart and their head, it's usually.
But we are talking about athleticism here, really, at the end of the day.
Totally. Yeah.
Exceptional horse fails the vet or X-rays. What do you do, Andrew?
Sell.
Sell. Okay. Remembering 90% of clients are amateurs. What do you want to see as an amateur horse as a 4 or 5 year old? What do you want to see as an amateur horse as a 4 or 5 year old? That will be our last question.
Like all our horses are produced to hopefully be top level horses, but there's like 50% of the horses that pass through my yard, we're producing them for the amateur market as well, because like as I think Cameron pointed out earlier, if you do come across that one that is a 5-star horse, they only come very, very, very rarely. The rest of them turn out to be very nice amateur horses. And when we say amateur horses, these could be still competing in 145 classes, 150 classes. Like, so I think professional horses, amateur horses, every horse, they're being produced the same way at the start. Their first 2 years of their career, it doesn't change.
Cameron, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I would agree 100% with that. You produce them the same way. You know, maybe you'll be give them a little bit more time if you really think it's going to be a top Grand Prix horse. But like that rideability is important, that the horse is produced. And what you want to see with a horse, that attitude, you know, that it's willing to work with the rider, and, you know, you get a feeling that a horse is trying to help you out and also has a little bit of an instinct to jump clear rounds. It doesn't really matter what level it's at. If a horse wants to jump clear rounds, it's always a nice thing to have that one in the truck.
Okay, questions are still coming. It is 2 minutes past 10. I'm so conscious that aside from anything else, we're on Irish time. Poor Cameron is on German time as well.
No problem at all. Happy to answer whatever comes in. No problem.
Yeah, well, look at I just, there's one more that's just kind of entered my head myself here as I'm just sitting thinking. And Andrew, you made a comment when you did the podcast with Michael Doherty, the Big Talk for Breeders interview, and you commented at the time that you would need to be able to anticipate 100k value in the individuals to invest up to 7 years of age, like with the ambition that you would attain the 100k plus once you got to that 7-8 year old stage. How do you rationalize that? I know that's really chucking you on the spot here now at the end of this, but I suppose we did come at this from the perspective of investing in young stock as well.
Everything is so expensive. The training, the production, the keeping them at home, everything is so expensive. You have to set some sort of a line, and they have to be potentially, I'm not saying they're worth that, they have to be potentially worth around that to actually keep them for 7 years, if you know what I mean, and pay all those expenses. And that's money that's gone out, and then something goes wrong with them and they get injured, it's gone, so you have to go on to the next one. So you have, that's what I do. I just put a ballpark. If I think he potentially, I'm not saying he will, but potentially worth that sort of money, but that if I think he's potentially worth 50k and whatever, I can't go on with him, because it's
Look,
not.
I think it's so important to vocalize this side of it, you know, because often these conversations they're had, you know, at the corner of the showgrounds or wherever, and they're not in the open for people. So there are some that are very aware of, you know, where they sit, and then there's others that are not. So Cameron, I mean, you're and I am going to finish up here now shortly, but you're in a different country. You're producing in Germany, shortly to go to Belgium, and just even from the perspective of you know, the differences that you see out there in the sense of young horse production, and you know, and listening to what Andrew has said there as well in the context of the context of value on animals too, with both of those in mind, like what's your experience of Germany in that sense?
Well, like Andrew said, it's very expensive here also to produce horses and to keep them a bit longer. If you do want to keep them till that age, till 7 or 8, they have to be exceptional. You know, they have to be to make it worth your while, because it's not only the money, it's the time that you put into them as well. So if you think a horse is going to be a nice horse and do a nice job, then at 5 or 6, I would be thinking more about selling it on and making somebody else happy with it and trying to get back and then go again. But it's like that if you're doing international shows now, it's very, very expensive. I mean, your entries for a normal 2-star show at a weekend would be 450 euros for a weekend. That's just your entries, not transport, or if you need somewhere to stay for yourself or your staff or anything. So you'd be talking about 600 euros for a weekend for an international show. So I think it is, you know, if you want to be doing that, you have to have, you know, you have to take it into consideration. Yeah.
And you mentioned previously as well that obviously, you know, at the likes of the Bundeschampionat and whatnot, there aren't classes there for the 4-year-olds for jumping.
Yeah, exactly. There's no 4-year-old national championships in Germany. The 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and now they used to have a 7-year-old, but now they have a 7-year-old as well. So you have your qualifiers during the year, and then you have that, but nothing for 4-year-olds. You have 4-year-old. All the classes are judged for 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds here.
And their style of their way of going. Yeah.
Rideability, the way of going, but it's not always like Toulouse. When I had Toulouse as a 6-year-old, we didn't win very many young horse classes because there were style classes, and he was jumping up in the air and gangly legs in him and stuff like that. But he's making up for it now anyway, so it's all right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different thing. But I actually would, you know, if I had young horse, I wouldn't mind sending it back to Ireland. I'd be more than happy like to send a horse back to Damien, and I've done that in the past with Jura as well. I think it's a great place to develop horses in Ireland. And, you know, here we have to enter the horses 6 weeks in advance. You know, like Damien said, you could jump a horse one weekend and you say, yeah, you know, this horse doesn't need to go next weekend. And, you know, to be able to make your decisions like that is very good. And also for me as well, if I have a nice young horse and I believe in him, I don't need to see him every show, every round. I'll see the videos afterwards, but better off give him over to somebody else and let them tip along with him. And then I won't be putting the pressure on him to get developed any quicker than he needs to. Like, you know, so I'll do that as well. Like, I'm quite happy to take horses from other people, but often my own ones I'll give to somebody else to ride for a little while and let them do it. So I'm not like on top of it the whole time.
And Damien, coming to you, I mean, do you have conversations with, you know, with your clients, your customers around valuation of the horses and where you're going in that sense as well?
Yeah, of course. I do it on a very regular basis, because we do up the bills every month and send them out, and there's a good lot of extra expense on top of my bill that we would have paid out, like every other business, like entries, travel and shoes, physios, blah blah blah. You know, there could be 400 on top of a bill every month that would have been paid out of my pocket. So I think it's important to discuss things with owners. And I agree with Andrew with the 100,000 thing, but I also, for the purpose of this event, I think it's important to just talk about that there is 10,000, 5,000 euro horses, even less. But I think if owners don't have too many horses and it's something they're involved in and they enjoy doing, I always put a value, maybe I could be wrong a good few times, but I put a value on a horse. And let's say if I thought the horse was worth 20,000 in 3 months, I'd encourage an owner to maybe spend 2,500 to 3,000 on them, and we'll assess the situation again if they were happy to take the gamble on that kind of money. So I agree with Andrew, of course, with the bigger picture, but for people that are doing it, maybe they only have 2 or 3 horses, I wouldn't emphasize so much on the huge cost and things. I think they can afford to maybe, I'd always say to an owner, sure, leave it here for 2 months, it's going to cost you so and so, it's worth taking the gamble, it's not going to cost you a fortune, we'll have a lot better idea what the horse is after 2 months. So, you know.
Absolutely fair point, Damien. There's different systems to suit different people at different levels as well too, so that's all positive. Look, at the clock again has rightly and truly beaten us. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to each of you and to have you here with us this evening. And you're so generous, not only in your time, but you're so generous with your information and with imparting the benefits of your experience and your knowledge. So on behalf of everybody that has been here this evening, I extend my personal thanks to you and the extended thanks of the audience. I'd like to thank our audience who have stayed with us for the evening, and I'd like to thank for their engagement and interaction as well too. So super discussion, guys, and I hope you get a nightcap now before you head off for Blanket Street. And just to say, the next Let's Talk Equine is on Tuesday, the 4th of May. Same time, same place. In the meantime, stay well and stay safe, everybody, and good night. And I'm sorry, but Zoom is very abrupt in its finish. So good night and thank you.
Everybody, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.